before we build our fire, we have to go over some rules. First, only build your fire in designated fire rings or fire pits. 2, never leave your fire unattended, and always be paying attention to what your fire is doing. You never know when a loose spark or loose ember might fall outside your fire ring and you need to smother it. 3, anything that goes into the fire stays into the fire. That means no pulling out sticks or reaching your hand in. And lastly, once your fire is finished, we've decided you're all done, properly extinguish your fire. And we'll talk about how to properly do that at the end. This particular technique gets its name from its shape, known as the Tipi. Let's go over our materials first before we start building our fire. First, we have our tinder bundle. And in this case, we're going to be using that cotton ball that we've soaked in Vaseline. Next, we have our tinder, which is our smallest sticks, about the length and width of a pencil. And then lastly, we have our kindling, which is about the, let's say, width of our thumb. I like to try to keep them pretty uniform in length. That way it just makes it easier when we're building our fire. So, our tinder bundle is going to work as the heart of our fire that we'll build around. So let's go ahead and lean some of our tiniest, driest, smallest sticks around our tinder bundle. Alright, so we have our tinder stacked on top of our tinder bundle. Next, we're going to build our teepee. I like to start with a stick that's something sort of like this, a slingshot. It has that nice Y shape. That comes really in handy when you're trying to do the balancing act that a teepee requires. Let's see. Gotta get that just right. Next, you're going to kind of want to hold this centerpiece with one hand and continue to build around your teepee. Whenever you set one on one side, try to follow by setting one directly across from it. And that kind of helps improve your balance. This technique is a challenge at first since it requires so much touch and balance. It's kind of like a game of Jenga, which also makes it fun. See if you can challenge some of your friends on who can make a teepee the fastest without it falling over. Alright, now that we have our teepee set up, I'm going to go ahead and use matches. I like to use matches because they're a little longer and I have little sausage fingers, so it gives me a little extra reach. So I can reach inside my teepee and light the tinder bundle without accidentally tipping anything over. So now once our tinder bundle lights, hopefully it'll light these smaller sticks I have resting around or on top of it, which then will grow up and eventually catch our larger kindling. Now, this is probably the hardest part of a fire, and that's judging when to add and when to wait. Probably some of the most common mistakes people make when building a fire is they add too much wood too fast. So really be sparing and only start by just adding the tiniest, driest little sticks. If you do ever feel like your fire could use a little extra muscle or it looks like it's dying out, go ahead and give it a nice little blow down at its base. And that'll help literally breathe some life into your fire. And there you have it, your teepee fire. Now the tricky part is making sure that you slowly add without anything jeopardizing, tipping it over, and falling apart. Eventually, your teepee will collapse, and that's okay. But hopefully by that time, that'll collapse and form a nice hot ash bed. So, great job. Let's move on to our next. So, we've gotten to the end of the night. Everybody's getting tired. We finished cooking. We've wrapped up making s'mores, and we're ready to go to bed. Now, the fire looks like it's pretty burned down. Can't see a lot of flames. It's mostly smoke. A lot of people might assume this is fine, I can go ahead, walk away, and go to bed. That's wrong. Flames don't equal fire, and hot coals in a bed like this are especially dangerous and can remain hot for sometimes up to days at a time. So, before leaving your fire for the night, you need to properly douse and extinguish your fire completely. There's a couple of ways I like to do that. First, I'll take a nice long stick And what I'll do is I'll break up my fire. Next, I'm going to do one of 2 rounds of dousing. So I have my water bottle here, and I'm going to pour this over the entire area. Alright, now all this steam, all this sizzling, you don't see any orange. It looks like you extinguished all the coals. Again, you might assume that this fire is properly put out. Again, you're wrong. These coals are hot enough to sustain a fire even after getting wet like that. On top of that, you'll notice, if you remember, we built our fire on top of this nice flat rock, which also has gained temperature as our fire is built. So again, I'm going to stir up all my wet coals and try to get all of them equally doused. At this point, you should stay by your fire, keep a close eye on it, and repeat this process as many times as necessary. You should be able to wave your hand over your fire and not feel any residual heat. Never place your hand directly in the fire, but you're just feeling for any of those hot coals you may have missed that might still be producing heat. So wait 5 or 10 minutes, come back and revisit your fire, and if necessary, go ahead and douse it one more time. Only then will you know you've properly and safely extinguished your fire.